Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about the differences between Tulum and Playa del Carmen. Which one is better? I'm going to get into things like the cost of living, transportation, accommodation, beaches, and the difference between the two when it comes to the culture and the vibe. So if you plan on visiting either Tulum or Playa del Carmen, whether it's for a vacation or to live, then make sure to watch this video. So I'm going to start by looking at the difference between the culture and the vibe between the two cities. So originally, Tulum and Playa del Carmen were originally small, sleepy fisher villages. Playa del Carmen started developing in the late 80s and early 90s, and therefore is more urban and developed than Tulum is. It has more services and amenities, which I'll go into more detail about later. Therefore, it has a more urban and active crowd who like to spend their days at the beach and then go bar and club hopping on 5th Avenue at night. It also attracts expats who come here for the warmer weather and cheaper cost of living compared to their home countries. And then of course there are the digital nomads who also have been coming here recently to work remotely. And then there are the regular tourists who come here for vacation, and then of course the locals. So Playa del Carmen has a mixture of people from all different areas and walks of life. Playa del Carmen is also more expat-y and touristy than other parts of Mexico. So you find a lot of services here are geared towards gringos. And it's easy to get by here without speaking Spanish, although I generally wouldn't recommend that. Tulum, on the other hand, started developing and expanding in the early to mid 2000s. And as a result, it's less developed and has less infrastructure than Playa del Carmen has. So it still has a very bohemian, laid-back, rustic, small-town feel compared to Playa del Carmen. But at the moment, it attracts people who are into spirituality and wellness. So you find a lot of yoga retreats and workshops and meditation classes, ayahuasca ceremonies, and things of that nature. And because it's less developed than Playa, it's also possible to live closer or near the jungle as well. So if you're into nature, Tulum is a place for you to be. Tulum has also become a popular tourist destination, so you also find a lot of partiers here. On top of that, you also find people that like to come to be seen. So you'll find a lot of Instagram influencers and people that love to go to the beach or to Rosa Negra and Taboo, for example, and share their pics on the gram. So let's talk about the beaches, which is probably the main reason why you're coming to either Tulum or Playa del Carmen in the first place. So in my opinion, Tulum has way better beaches than Playa del Carmen. And that's because, like I said, Tulum is less developed and urban than Playa del Carmen is. So the beaches are more unspoiled and less crowded. Or at least they used to be less crowded than the ones in Playa del Carmen. But with the increase in tourism over the last few months, you are finding more people along the beaches of Tulum. But that said, I still find that Tulum has a way better beach experience than Playa del Carmen. The water is clearer and the beaches are sandier. But on the other hand, even though the beaches in Playa del Carmen aren't as nice as the ones in Tulum, it's way easier to get to and access the beaches in Playa del Carmen than it is in Tulum. In Playa del Carmen, for example, you can walk to the beach within 5 minutes from 5th Avenue. And it's easier to live closer to the beach in Playa del Carmen as well. So it's very walkable. Whereas in Tulum, on the other hand, if you want to live by the beach, then your best bet is to be in the hotel zone, which, if you're on a budget, can be pretty expensive. So most people tend to stay in and around Tulum Central or Aldea Zama and La Velera and then commute to the beach. But if you want to walk to the beach from Tulum Central, it takes about an hour to walk. So the best way to get to the beach from Tulum Central or Aldea Zama or La Velera is to take a taxi or drive. And that takes about 20 to 30 minutes if there's no traffic. So sometimes it almost feels like you're taking a mini trip from Tulum Central to the beaches. So at the end of the day, if you want nicer beaches and an experience you can share on Instagram and are willing to commute 20 to 30 minutes to get there from the center of town, then go with Tulum. But if you want easy access to the beach and a diverse experience and are okay with a less quality experience when it comes to the attractiveness of the beach, then go with Playa del Carmen. Either way, like I said in my earlier videos, Quintana Roo has a problem with sargassum. So you'll find that both in Tulum and Playa del Carmen. And the severity of the problem depends on the time of year that you're there. So make sure to do some research before you go about the sargassum situation by asking questions in the Facebook groups that I linked in the description below. And if you're looking for things to do, Playa del Carmen has more of that. There's a cinema, a theme park, shopping malls, more restaurants to choose from than Tulum, and then of course there's the beach, which you can go to during the day and then go bar and club hopping at night on 5th Avenue. And in Tulum, if you're into the outdoors, then of course there's the beaches, and there are lots of cenotes to explore in the area as well. And then if you're into spirituality and wellness, you'll find lots of yoga retreats and workshops, meditation classes, ayahuasca and temazcal ceremonies. So there's lots to do if you're into the whole spirituality and wellness thing. And then of course, like I said, if you're into parties, there's also the jungle parties, beach parties, cenote parties, and yacht parties. And when it comes to amenities, because Playa del Carmen is more developed and urban than Tulum is, you'll find more things like doctors, banks, major supermarkets like Walmart, Soriana, Chedraui than you'll find in Tulum. You also find, like I said, shopping malls as well, a cinema, and department stores like Liverpool. And because Tulum is less developed, I think there are only like 3 major supermarkets and a handful of ATMs across town, a lot of which don't work as well. And if you need services and repairs, for example, if you need to get your iPhone or Mac fixed, then it's cheaper, easier, and better for you to go to Playa del Carmen than it is to find someone in Tulum. So overall, Playa is better if you want to live in a place where you have access to more options when it comes to groceries, shopping, electronics, and services and repairs. And Tulum, on the other hand, is a place to be if you're okay with living a little bit more off the grid so that you can enjoy that jungle to sea experience of being closer to nature without some of the comforts and the options that you might get in a bigger city. And when it comes to housing, you have more options in Playa del Carmen. You can live in a variety in different types of neighborhoods like Playa del Carmen Central, along 5th Avenue, Ejidal, Colosio, or Playa Cal, which is a gated community in the south of Playa del Carmen. And in Tulum, you have less variety and you're basically limited to Tulum Centro, Aldea Zama, which is a gated community with condos targeted towards expats, but is less secure than what you'd find in Playa del Carmen. There's La Velera, which is closer to the jungle and has a mixture of locals and foreigners, but is becoming more developed and more gentrified. So depending on if you want to live in Playa Del Carmen or Tulum, then I recommend heading over to Facebook Marketplace and seeing the rentals available and their prices. The cost will fluctuate depending on low or high season. So the prices are higher during high season and lower during low season. I also did 2 separate videos, one on how to find an apartment in Tulum and the other on how to find an apartment in Playa Del Carmen. And I've linked to both of those videos in the description below. Tulum is more expensive than Playa Del Carmen though when it comes to housing, so you can expect to pay more there than you would in Playa Del Carmen. And that's in general for everything. Tulum is way more expensive than Playa Del Carmen. In fact, Tulum is one of the most expensive places in Mexico. So don't assume that just because you're coming to Mexico, you're gonna find things for dirt cheap. If you're not careful, you actually end up paying the same prices as you would back home for housing, going out, and eating out. And that's especially the case if you go out to places like Rosa Negra and Taboo. On the other hand, Playa del Carmen is not the cheapest place in Mexico either, especially because a lot of things are catered towards gringos and foreigners. But it is cheaper than Tulum, especially when it comes to housing, and you get more variety when it comes to shopping and eating out, which makes things cheaper for you. But again, if you're not careful, you could end up spending just as much in Playa del Carmen as you would back home when it comes to housing and eating out. So my advice is if you're on a budget, go local whenever you can, which means live in local neighborhoods, eat at local places, and shop at local places. So if you're going to live and work in paradise, then you're going to need strong Wi-Fi. And the Wi-Fi in Tulum sucks. Don't forget that Tulum is still part of the jungle, and because it's the least developed of the two, it still has a lot of catching up to do when it comes to Wi-Fi. You might get lucky and have strong Wi-Fi in your apartment, but don't count on that. And not all restaurants and cafes in Tulum have strong Wi-Fi. So if you're going to work remotely in Tulum, then prepare for the fact that you won't always have strong and consistent Wi-Fi coverage throughout town. So if you want to be somewhere where you can work remotely with no interruptions and where you can do Zoom calls, stream, download, and upload, then go with Playa. The Wi-Fi is stronger there. That said, both Tulum and Playa have excellent co-working spaces with strong Wi-Fi where you can do some work. I actually find that I like the co-working spaces in Tulum better. I like the experiences there and the atmosphere and the ambience better than the Playa del Carmen. But that said, the Wi-Fi at both co-working spaces in Tulum and Playa del Carmen are pretty comparable. And I have videos about the co-working spaces in both Tulum and Playa del Carmen, which I've linked to in the description below. Now, let's talk about getting around. Now, in both Tulum and Playa del Carmen, you can access ride-sharing apps like Uber and Lyft. So your best bet is to use a taxi. And the price that you get will depend on if you're a local or a foreigner, if you can speak Spanish, and your ability to negotiate. So in general, tourists and gringos get charged more than locals do. And you also get charged more if you can't speak Spanish, and you get charged more if you don't negotiate and bargain. So after you've been in either Tulum or Playa del Carmen for a while, and get a better lay of the land and a better idea of how much it costs to get from A to B, you'll be able to tell whether or not you're being ripped off or not. And if you want to walk around, I find that even though Playa del Carmen is bigger than Tulum, it's actually more walkable. And that's because, like I said earlier on, it's easier to walk to the beach, and because the town is more developed, it's easier to walk from neighborhood to neighborhood as well. And because 5th Avenue is pedestrian friendly only, you can basically walk across town on 5th Avenue from one end to the other. Although I wouldn't recommend that because it's a tourist trap. And even though Tulum is smaller, the neighborhoods of Tulum Centro, La Veleta, Aldezama, and the Hotel Zone are all spread out across from each other, so it's not as easy to walk between the different neighborhoods. Both places are pretty bike friendly too, and you find bike lanes in both Tulum and Playa del Carmen. But I find the biking experience in Tulum much better than Playa del Carmen because it's more laid back and you get the experience of biking through town, the jungle, and to the beach. You can pretty much get by in both places without a car, but if you must get one, I'd say you need one more in Tulum than Playa del Carmen and that's just because of how spread out everything is in Tulum. Or you can use my favorite mode of transportation, the scooter, which is popular in both Tulum and Playa del Carmen. Just don't drive on the highway between the two though. And last but not least, let's talk about safety in Playa and Tulum. Now, Tulum has become more and more dangerous since the start of the pandemic. The increase in tourism and the higher number of parties has led to an increase in drug use. And that has led to an increase in cartel activities and shootings which have made headlines. At first, only cartel members were casualties of these shootings, but increasingly, more and more tourists have been getting caught in the crossfire and getting killed. Since last fall, there have been sporadic shootings at restaurants, bars, and parties across Tulum, and foreigners have been getting killed. And it's not just cartel shootings that you have to worry about in Tulum, but there's also been an increase in condo robberies, especially in La Valeta. So I'd say right now, Playa del Carmen is safer than Tulum. And although I haven't heard of stories of cartel shootings in Playa del Carmen, what you do have to look out for is police corruption here. I've heard of so many stories of people, especially men, being stopped while they walk back home from the bar or the club and being searched and intimidated and bribed. So on the whole, both Playa del Carmen and Tulum have become less safe since the start of the pandemic. But I wouldn't let that deter you from coming though. Tulum and Playa are still safer than a lot of American cities, for example. So just because you're on vacation here doesn't mean you should let your guard down. Use your common sense and continue to be street smart. Do things like lock your apartment doors, don't carry more money than you need, and always watch your drink or have a friend watch it for you if you need to go to the bathroom. And always watch your belongings. For example, ladies, always keep your purse or handbag in eyeshot if you're at a restaurant. So if you were to ask me which one is the best, which one do I prefer, Tulum or Playa del Carmen? I say both are pretty great. Tulum is an amazing place to vacation. You have great beaches, great weather, access to cenotes, and opportunities for wellness and spirituality. And lots of great parties going on there as well. I wouldn't live there long term though. Playa del Carmen, on the other hand, is a better place to live. We have the beach and great weather there too, but access to better services, amenities, and infrastructure than in Tulum. It's also cheaper there too. So that's it. I hope you liked this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you team Tulum or are you team Playa? Which do you prefer?